How's it going, everybody? Scott Spreitzer here with Tony George. We are DocSports.com, and you're watching our weekly six-pack in college of pro football. 6 football games to talk about, 3 in college, 3 in the NFL, and we're talking about some big games in college. We're going to get to those in a moment. See that banner across the top of your screen? It says, get a free $60 account. It means what it says. You click on the link below that video, and you sign up for the free $60 account if you're not yet a member at DocSports.com. And that means you're going to get $60 towards any of Tony George's daily packages or any of mine. It's a great way to give DocSports.com a trial run. Boy, we're 5-6 weeks into the college football season, Tony, and I would have bet against you at about minus 800 that we wouldn't be talking about TCU at Kansas before the season began. But here we are. TCU in Lawrence, laying 6.5, 7 points, total 67.5. And listen, Kansas is undefeated. They caught a ton of lucky breaks last week, thanks to Matt Campbell and Iowa State making mistake after mistake. Kansas finished with barely over 200 yards in that game. They were badly outgained. 3 missed Iowa State field goals, mismanagement of play calling and adjustments by Matt Campbell like you haven't seen since Scott Frost. The only thing that I can think about this one is, will TCU still be in a hangover mode after celebrating kicking the Sooners sideways? They had like 450 yards at halftime against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But anyway, TCU at Kansas, your thoughts on this one?
Well, Sonny Dykes is in charge, now. He was at SMU where he beat TCU last year as SMU's head coach. And he's Patterson had just ran his course down there. He's a defensive-minded coach. Matter of fact, he's Texas's defensive coordinator under Sarkisian this year, so he didn't have to travel too far for a new gig. But Sonny Dykes' handprints are all over this program on the offensive side of the ball. They are number 2 in the country in points scored per game. I mean, this is a team that I think was no fluke against Oklahoma. And are they going to be fired up down in Lawrence, Scott? Not for Fog Allen. Not because Dickie V and Jay Bellis is coming to town to call the Duke game. No, the college game day is in Lawrence this Saturday.
Yeah.
So they're on campus all fired up. But last week, as I'd mentioned to you earlier off the air, I had Iowa State against them. And I'm sick of the Matt Campbell going to Nebraska talk because, quite frankly, he was kind of, in my opinion, he was about a 3-year one-hit wonder there. He had a great quarterback and, Brock Purdy and threw some big upsets at some guys. And you and I being from Nebraska and following the Huskers like you and I do, even in a deep depression, we know that going into Ames, Iowa and playing is a snake pit. That's a very tough place to go win a football game. It always has been, even when they sucked, even when Sage Rosenfels was their quarterback. I mean, we're going way back. But this game here, you let Iowa State double up the yards on you, and yet you still somehow won. And bear in mind, their running back, his Shaw, is out. He suffered a major injury in that game. He's one of their key components to what, he touches the rock 11, 12 times a game. Out of the backfield in terms of running, and he's targeted 5 or 6 times on swing passes. They like to get him out in space. His backup is 50-50 whether he's going to play this week, Scott. And TCU is not going to be throwing drag routes, over the middle, 6 yards short of the first down marker like Campbell was doing, counting on a receiver to get yards after the catch. Sure. I think this is where they come back down to earth. I like TCU here. I'll lay the 7. I think this is the game that Kansas, despite all the pomp and circumstance around the game on a national TV level that morning in Lawrence, fans don't play the game. And I think TCU is going to put up at least as many yards if Iowa State did, if not more, Scott. I mean, they're number 1 in the nation in yards per game. Mm-hmm. I mean, so that being said, I think Kansas meets their match here. Sorry for all my Rock Chalk fans back in Kansas City. I've got a bunch of them in Scottsville. I'm going to be eating crow big time if Kansas pulls off the upset here. But nonetheless, I'll go ahead. And this was a 31-28 game last year at TCU, by the way. But that was a Patterson coach team.
Sure.
And they lost that one. But at the end, I do like I like the Horned Frogs to go in there and get a win. I'd say 2-touchdown win. Let's switch gears to the Pac-12. And, Scott, UCLA here at home against Utah. And currently, they're a 4.5-point home dog, total 65. They're expecting some scoring in this game. And I wasn't a believer in UCLA until last week. That's when I was that final score against Washington wasn't indicative of how they dominated that football game, Scott. And of course, Utah, their one skid mark this year was fumbling the ball twice inside the 1-yard line against Florida and losing that game. Since then, they played relatively well. And this, like last week we talked about, Scott, in the big ACC matchup over at Red Rock Sportsbook, with Clemson and North Carolina State, that helped determine how the ACC is going to fall this year. This game here is going to help determine how the Pac-12 falls.
Sure. No, and I'll tell you what, I'm watching that game last week, Utah against Oregon State, and they caught Oregon State at the right time. OSU was off the tough, close loss to USC the prior week, which was kind of their game of the season up until the Civil War when they take on the Oregon Ducks. But they actually outgained Utah 417 to 361. But 4 interceptions later, well, it was a little bit tough to overcome when you throw 4 picks against a quality team like Utah. Having said all of that, it was only 21-16, 5-point game, more than midway through the third quarter. So the final score with the Utes winning the way they did was a little bit misleading. It's the first time Utah's faced a really good team in a spot that's not a big advantage for Utah since that loss to Florida when they lost 29-26 in Gainesville. UCLA finally faced someone decent last week, and they blew out Washington. They gained 500 yards in the process. You mentioned it wasn't as close as the final score. You're absolutely right. UCLA wins 40-32. It's 40-16 through 3 quarters. Dominant effort in that game. So you got Utah, who's ranked in the bottom half of college football on things like explosive defensive metrics. I don't know, man. I think both of these teams do damage offensively, and it goes over that total of 64.5. I can't wait to see if they get more than 25,000 at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena for this one. What a horrible fan support situation. Even Troy Aikman mentioned about, they couldn't even support us when we were number 1 in the nation in college football.
Yeah.
I've been to the Rose Bowl several times. I remember going there when Lawrence Phillips was a freshman and watching Nebraska play at UCLA. I think the final score was like 14-13 Nebraska. Very strong defensive football game. There were like 70,000 people in the stands and 50,000 were wearing red. They just don't get the support. So I wouldn't be shocked if Utah's fan support is bigger as far as the amount of youth supporters in the stands than UCLA, who's playing this home game. Just terrible fan support. But I think those in attendance are going to see a high-scoring game. Tony, Tennessee and LSU, as we switch to the SEC, the Vols laying a field goal, total 63.5. LSU didn't exactly blow the doors off a struggling Auburn team with a coach on the hot seat, while Tennessee has been as low as a 2-point favorite in this one, as high as a 4-point favorite. A little bit of back and forth right now, laying 3. Your thoughts?
Look ahead line on this was 5.5. And now you're getting them at 3. The look ahead line at 5.5, I kind of like the LSU. Now we're sitting at 3. I'm thinking Tennessee off a bye week here after that big win over Florida, something they hadn't done. Pardon me, getting choked up on this. If this was 6 days later where they had to travel and go to LSU and play after beating Florida in that huge emotional game, I would take LSU. But we've had a week off now to kind of step back. You've got Tennessee, number 1 in college football in yards per game, number 2 in college football in passing, number 3 in points per game. The flip side of that coin is defensively, they kind of suck. But I'm not so sure that LSU can exploit it. And I don't know about you, Scott. I have not been impressed with Jaden Daniels yet for LSU. I really haven't been. I know he did good things at Arizona State last year under Herm Edwards and that. And he didn't have any receivers at Arizona State, so they dropped a lot of balls there. but he's got some receivers there that aren't that sure-handed either at LSU here. I'd kind of, you know what? The 63.5 might go under too a little bit here. But at the end of the day, I got news for you. I think Tennessee's a real deal here. They're power rated much higher. I've got them at, I had them at -5. Now I understand that LSU's home field's worth something, but I think Tennessee's offense under Josh Heupel is just getting their feet underneath of them, Scott. And I like Tennessee. I like Tennessee on the short number here. Getting it if sitting on 3. If this was 4.5, 5, 5.5, I might lean home team, but Tennessee by a touchdown in this one for me. We're going to switch gears to the NFL, Scott, and we're going to go over to jolly old England. Another game in London. We had one last week. It's always nice living here in Las Vegas, Scott, when I can get up, about 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning. And by the time my coffee's made, I already got an NFL game on TV. And this here is an interesting game. Giants taking on the Packers, 8.5. Packers are laying here 41. I haven't been impressed with Green Bay all year. I've been impressed with New York simply because they're kind of like the Kansas Jayhawks. I don't think we'd be talking about them being 3-1 at this particular juncture in the season, Scott. And yet here we are. They got all kinds of quarterback issues there. Your thoughts?
Now, I know some sharp minds, including like Scott Kellen, for instance, who believes that the New York Giants are one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL, despite their win-loss record. And I don't have them down to the bottom 3, but I've got them like bottom 5 or 6 as far as the Giants are concerned. And, this one's laying 8 right now as far as Green Bay is concerned. A whole bunch of injuries up and down the roster for the New York Giants right now, including Danny Dimes. He's questionable with the ankle injury. Tyrod Taylor, backup quarterback, questionable with concussion. And I got to tell you, with the recent NFL concussion situation being questioned, over the last couple of weeks, Tua, other players, the Giants are going to be about as cautious as it gets, maybe even more cautious than normal when it comes to Taylor. I think we're going to see a whole lot of Saquon Barkley running the football. He's been terrific so far this season, catching it out of the backfield. Also, he can create with his legs and run through people, run around them. He can turn 3-yard gains into 10-yard gains. I get all of that, but he's got to have a quarterback who's healthy to get him that football. And if the G-men are down to Davis Webb at quarterback, all of a sudden things obviously really change for this football team. Green Bay's offense looked decent against the Pats last week, their best game yet. Teaser time, Tony. This happens to be a play that's going to be on a lot of teaser cards. Green Bay teased down to 2, down to 1.5, 6-point teasers. I'll likely be using them on a teaser card also. I don't know that Green Bay is going to win this game by 10, which is basically what you have to do when you're laying this number of 8. But I think they can win the game outright. I don't think the Giants will beat them outright. So this will be part of some teasers. I know the books, they'll be sweating it a little bit with Green Bay.
Oh, yeah.
Beat outright, so.
I was curious. I was curious to know what you thought of that 41. I know by the way, folks, the show isn't scripted. Scott and I just pull up like got a couple guys taking a piss over a fence post, drinking a beer, talking about sports with you. But at the end of the day here, the one thing I noticed that is an advantage for New York in this game, Green Bay can't stop the frickin' run. I mean, the Patriots shoved it down their throat. That's the one thing that gives me pause about laying the 8.5. That's why I think the best bet in this, I agree with you. They're going to be in a teaser package, -2.5. Come on.
If they could get Danny Dimes out there or Tyrod Taylor and have a threat of a pass, then they could do damage with Barkley on the ground. Who, by the way, I do a VSiN show every Saturday night, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific time, down at the Circa Racing Sportsbook, and talk about the energy down there. Holy cow. Anybody who's coming to town, check out the Circa on a Saturday, college football Saturday. Matt Humans, who I do the show with, co-host on the show, he actually grabbed Barkley, I'm going to say, at around 200 to 1 for NFL MVP. Does he, this was a few weeks ago. Does he believe Barkley's going to win it? No. I mean, if you ask him honestly. But at 200 to 1, you got a guy who's just tearing it up on the ground right now, catching footballs out the backfield, looking like the old Barkley before he got hurt. Now, the Giants are going to have to be a 500 team at the end of the season for him to get any votes, and he understands that. But it's not bad at 200 to 1. Anyway, switching gears, Eagles at Arizona. Eagles laying 5.5, total 49. Philly, arguably the best team in football through 4 weeks of football, or at least in the NFC. They've been terrific on offense all 4 games. They did a pretty good job on defense when needed. Tough spot with Dallas on deck. That's the problem. It's Dallas on deck. Arizona off yet another road win. Cardinals were my top play on Sunday, and they went into Carolina, took care of Baker Mayfield. That's not saying a whole lot. Your take on this one?
Well, look, I like Philly here. Arizona at home, they're better on the road than they are at home. You hit the nail on the head. The one thing that concerned me, and last week I took a loss on the 6-6 show over at Red Rocks. I took Jacksonville. They lost by 8. They were catching 6.5. They gave the ball away 6 times, and at the end of the day, Philly was +5 in the turnover category, Scott, and yet they only won by 8. Which, whenever you see an NFL team that's supposed to be the best team in the NFC, let's forget about the NFL.
They are. Check out the stats. They are. Doesn't mean
I
they're
know.
in the NFC. Through 4 weeks, they're the best team in the NFC.
I got you.
Metrics.
I got you. But I thought
That's
that was
supposed to be
yeah.
the NFL, baby. You just got to win by 1.
They at the end of the day here, I was a little surprised with that many extra possessions. They could put up more points now, albeit the weather was a factor in that game. It was a continuous downpour. So I don't know what to take away from that game other than that raise my eyebrows. But the one thing that the Arizona Cardinals have done this year, Scott, you know it, they did it right here in Las Vegas. They spot teams a couple of touchdowns before they decide to start playing.
Yep.
And if you do that against Philadelphia, you're going to be down double digits at the end of the first quarter because these guys are explosive on offense here. Arizona 0-6 against the spread, their last 6 home games here. And the one thing that Philly did in that game, we keep hearing about Jalen Hurts and these weapons at wide receiver in the weather. And we talked about this last week on the show, Scott, how both of us were impressed with Jacksonville's defense up to that point. They're better than people thought they were. They ran the ball for 210 yards against Jacksonville's defense. What do you think they're going to do here against Arizona? I'm going to lay the 5.5, and it's a terrible number to lay in the NFL, but you're talking about number 2 offense, number 3 defense overall in the NFL and that offense against the 28th ranked defense. I don't care. I don't see Arizona having a huge home field advantage because it's never paid off for them ATS-wise, Scott. Just between me and you and a fence post. One more here.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Jump in. You have a comment?
Oh no, I thought you were done there. I jumped in too soon. So go ahead.
Finish that's okay.
I jumped in too soon. Yeah.
That's all right. We've never done this before. This is our first rodeo. Give us a break, folks.
All these pregnated pauses. I got to figure out where I got to jump in.
Oh man. Well, I tell you what. The LA Rams are going to have somebody jump in and spark their offense pretty quick. They're taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Prescott is out. I just saw a press conference on NFL Network before we came on, and the New York Giants head coach played a Bill Belichick and wouldn't tip his hand on his quarterback. And on the other side of the coin, the Dallas Cowboys, Cooper Rush is the starter. And it's been interesting to me, Scott. They've been more successful with him than without him in terms of their schemes on offense that they changed up. And they've proven to be successful in these games here. The Rams just looked like a total mess the other night. Of course, the 49ers have they just got their number. They just have their number there. And so, but the Rams need to retool here. Scott, Dallas catching 4.5, total 43.5. Can the Rams turn it around? Because this Dallas defense has been the most impressive thing on their team all year long.
The thing the Rams ran into last week, and doing a couple of shows, I had mentioned I liked San Francisco in that game. The Saturday night show at VSiN talked about San Francisco, and we talked about the fact that the Rams, or Stafford in particular, has a rough time with teams that can put pressure on a quarterback with their down linemen. They don't have to bring the extra blitzer, the extra person to blitz. And so that's why he had struggled in the past against San Francisco. And then the Niners come out, throw a wrench into the system, and they said, all right, We know that you're going to expect us to rush with our down linemen. All of a sudden, you see him bringing an extra man on the pass rush and throwing blitzes at him from time to time. I mean, it was kind of a change with that San Francisco defense, and I think it surprised Matthew Stafford a bit. Dallas has a decent pass rush too. I haven't decided on this game yet. I think Cooper Rush is going to take his first loss. But as far as the point spread, I'm not sure yet. And you look at Dallas last week, they're up 15-10 against Washington through 3 quarters of play. It was a 5-point game, anybody's game to win. And then they put 10 fourth quarter points on the board, give them credit that they were able to outscore them 10-0 in the final 15 minutes. They were actually outgained in that game, Dallas was. They had a +2 turnover margin. You spoke of turnovers earlier being a big reason that Philly got by Jacksonville. That was the case here with the Cowboys last week. In fact, they had just one loss in the NFL last week. It was the Washington Commanders. And so they did outgain Dallas in that game. They ended up losing the game. You do see that from time to time in the NFL. But Dallas has that decent pass rush. Stafford's been sacked, 16 times? I wrote down these notes to make sure I got it right. 16 times on the season, 7 each by Buffalo and San Francisco. It is a divisional sandwich, though, for Dallas. I hate jumping on teams in this spot against definitely a wounded animal when it comes to the Rams. Yeah. They're off the win over Washington, Dallas. They got the biggie up next against the Eagles. Meanwhile, the Rams have this one and Carolina, both in Los Angeles, which means they know they're 2 wins away from being 4-2 when they go into their Week 7 bye week. So, oh boy, it's Wednesday afternoon. I don't know if I'm going to get involved in this game, but right now I'm going to say that it would probably have to be the Rams or nothing in this contest for me.
Dude, let's just put together the teaser on the show. We're going to tease Green Bay down to 2.5, like we mentioned,
2, yeah.
We can tease, and then we can take Dallas and tease them up to +10.5. We get them through 6, 7, and 10. So some value numbers there. You're teasing through a bunch of key fall numbers in terms of both. Matter of fact, Scott, the one thing I've noticed is when it comes to these points, especially if you use it in a teaser with Green Bay, is Dallas is holding people to 15 points a game. We're talking about
they're playing well on defense.
Yeah, and we're talking about 4.5 points here, which already brings that into play. But I'm like you. I have a feeling that a sleeping giant could awake, this weekend in this game. And if it does, they might win by a touchdown, maybe 10 points. However, I take them in a teaser plus the 10.5 for the Packers. Why not?
They certainly have the situation. On their side, the Rams, with the Dallas schedule. Washington, then this game outside the division, then back in the division against Philly. Now, personally, we all have our personal things that we do when it comes to teasing, that kind of stuff. I won't tease a 4.5. And that's my personal choice. It's just, not saying you're not going to win if you do that. I'm just saying mine is basically, 0 up to 2.5. Either tease up a dog or tease down to 0 to 2.5 with a favorite.
Right.
That's what I tend to do. But again, that's what I do for me. I'm not saying that you're not going to win because we have different ways of teasing games. But,
sure.
I'm not going to be shocked if the Rams win this by 7 to 10 points. I'm certainly not going to be shocked by that. So, anyway, check out Tony George's picks all week long, every day. We got baseball playoffs starting on Friday with 4 big, fat, juicy playoff games. I can't wait. Tony, I've been on this nice run of baseball, 11-2 the last 13 days as we record this. And it really got going August 31st. Since then in baseball, 67% winners and up almost $5,000. It just really kicked into gear. So knocking on wood, we hope to continue that in the playoffs. And football, college and pro combined 24-8 so far this season. So we're going to try to keep that going. Tony, I know you got a nice card coming up too for you in college and pro football.
Right. I was just going to do some quick math between the two of us. You said 24-8. I'm on a 12-5 run. 3,
I'll take it.
7. I'm going to work on my math from Auburn High School in Auburn, Nebraska. That's a hell of a run. That is 37-13, folks, between two guys with over 30 years of experience each over there. And I'm off a couple back to Scott. I think the NFL card this week, especially in the totals area, provides a lot of opportunity this week if you do your homework. So I'm looking forward to a great weekend as well here in football on that 12-5 run. And I'm going to leave the Nebraska-Rutgers game Friday out off my card, by the way, Scott.
You're going to leave that off? I think I'm going to leave that off my card, too. I don't know, man. It's like I want to see Mickey Joseph do well. I love the guy. He's a Husker at heart. He says all the right things. The players love him. I really hope he does enough to show us that he should be the coach next year. If not, go get Leipold. Don't go after Matt Campbell in Lincoln.
No.
You're getting a bunch of close games, and he's going to blow them, a lot of them. And haven't we just gone through that? A bunch of close games where the coach blows it with a couple of bad calls. And real quickly, let's knock on wood here. Sitting at 17-3 in the Westgate and Circa NFL contest. Top 5 in one, top 10 in the other. I think we're like 9th in one. And so there is a big payoff after 6 weeks. So I hope this NFL card is as juicy as you believe it is. And I hope to keep that going. For Tony George, I'm Scott Spreitzer. Check out that free $60 account. You've been watching Six Pack, brought to you by DocSports.com. Let's put them in the win column, everybody.